Welcome to Lessons from the Woodlot. As we go down this journey with you guys, we're so excited to see you guys coming on board. We're hearing from you guys, and we're really happy that you like what we're doing so far, and we're excited that you're excited. And hunting season is close. I know I saw Monday Night Football last night, and I was like, oh man, it's coming, baby. It's coming.
We talk about this all the time. There's little triggers.
These little triggers.
Little triggers that get me excited. I'm certain every one of you, every person that gets excited about archery season or deer season coming up, for me, there's a couple, through the summer. The very first one is when they start picking wheat. When you start seeing a combine in a field, I mean, that just, for me, fall, So that's the first one that kind of, gets me going, and then you get the summer velvet time, and then you get the summer velvet time going, and then you get the picking of the wheat, but the main one we've talked about is football. When football hits, it's just around the corner.
It's close.
So
yeah,
it's exciting for me.
Yeah. So for being from Florida, we don't have combines.
Yep.
What we have is Lowe's. And when they put out the Halloween decorations, it's getting close. And I've seen Halloween decorations at Lowe's in Iowa. So I'm like, hey, here we go. So we all have those triggers. Again, I am the novice hunter. I'm Tim Radcliffe.
I'm Mark Luster.
Mark has agreed to give us the secrets. We've started delving into this the last couple of weeks. We've talked about, where we're going to find these big bucks, right? How to find big bucks, okay? So now you found a big buck. Hopefully by now you started
some summertime.
You started to put in some scouting time, and you have some ideas where you want to hunt. Well, next thing is stand placement, okay? And one of the very important lessons I learned from Mark, and again, if you remember, I told you in the previous episode, I let deer go to 5 and they just disappeared. I never seen them again. And Mark came out and helped me learn kind of the error in my ways. And through those lessons, we started to kind of, Mark has a phrase that he says, he's like, you're asking a mature buck to do what he's never going to do. Never. Not one time is that buck going to do that unless there is a doe directly in front of him and he's got his nose where it doesn't belong. And then he's going to do whatever she does, she's going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I watch hunting shows, and I hear people say, I'm going hunting every single day. That's just what I'm going to do. I got a big deer on cam. I'm going to hunt this farm every single day. Well, if you're hunting a farm every single day, you're violating the first lesson Mark taught me, which is keeping human intrusion to a minimum and keeping these farms. Like, you said in the last episode, you show me where there are no people, and I'll show you a farm that has big deer on it. So if we don't want to continue in the ways of our past and we want to improve our seasons, we have to understand this question of asking a big buck to do something he's never going to do. So Mark, with that being said, you're the one who told that to me. Where'd that come from?
Well, I'm going to go down a wormhole, and it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll try to abbreviate it the best I can. Back in 2007, I guess it was. Drought year, and especially in the late summer, early fall, and it was a unique to the point that at least around us, every cornfield, crop field was basically harvested before season ever started. But in this particular scenario where I was at, again, off of previous statements that you may or may not, if you've watched the previous episodes, where I talk about where being out in the middle of nowhere, kind of, off the beaten path of the hunting community, out where not much cover, exists, out there. And this was one of those farms. And as you well know, in most of the Midwest, most states, whatnot, or at least if they can, they're all kind of sectioned up in 1 mile sections for the most part. There is some, nuances to that. But as a general rule, especially in flatland, Illinois, central Illinois, you get a lot of 1 mile sections. Well, this particular one happened to be on a 1 mile section, but they picked all of the corn and all of the beans around it already in September, early September. So by the first week of September, the end of the first week of September, there really wasn't any crop out there. Well, it gave me a unique look into the deer's lives that I've never had before, because we've never had crops out that early ever, you know. And I got to sit back and kind of watch 5 bucks. Well, there's several does too, but 5 bucks coming out of this inside corner. Now there were 3 immature, what I would say immature deer, and then there was one that I think was a 4-year-old and one that was 6 plus. Many days, I would sit back and watch that inside corner, and they were coming out into a picked cornfield. And I'd watch them come out. Some days there would be 3, and then some days there would be all 5. And I could not make rhyme or reason as to why that was taking place. And I was like, gosh, it can't. I mean, I've not been in there. I'm not going into that. I'm watching it from afar, you know, and so on and so forth.
Trying to find a pattern, right?
But I'm sitting here trying to find a pattern, because the one deer was a really nice deer. It was a mid 160s deer. Dave Bogart, my filming partner at the time, I basically gifted. I don't want to call it gifted. We're a team, you know. So, but I was like, hey, you want to shoot this deer? You know, if I remember right, the year previous or whatever, I'd been met with a little more success or whatever, and I can't remember the exact reason, but I wanted him to shoot the deer. You know, it's a really nice deer, and I mean, I was like, man, this deer's right here. And I'd actually got in, set up the hunting stand, right off the inside corner, you know, 15, 20 yards off that inside corner, and all the deer were coming out that inside corner when they did come out. Well, then I started seeing where it was does and the young ones, and those 2 mature ones, or more mature ones, wasn't there. And then that plan kind of, or that laid out that way for several different times I was there. And I'm like, what in the world? Why? Why is it that sometimes the only time that ones were missing was the 2 mature bucks? You know, those are the only ones that ever was missing. All our other ones would usually always make it before dark. And then sometimes they would waltz out there with all kinds of daylight left. And I was like, man. So I grabbed the notebook and I started writing. Every day when they come out, I'd write down what was going on, what was going on, what was going on. And I was trying to find a pattern. You know, I was doing dew points, barometric pressure, wind speed, wind direction, you know, moon phase, anything that we thought was make anything of anything that would drive movement to not movement, we were looking. And the pattern actually showed up so fast and so absolute. I actually didn't believe what I thought I was seeing. And my point with that is in all of the time watching them nearly every day, or every day that I could, not once. So when I started keeping the book, not once with an S in the wind. So if it was south in any direction, so if you envision this being north and this being south, they tend to be coming out of the south, and this is that inside corner. They're hitting that southwest corner of that picked cornfield. Right along that line, it was logged to the west, mature timber to the east that is south of that cornfield. And typically every single time they come out right on that corner. So I'd never seen any deer come out of that timber farther east in that more mature open timber that was always right on that edge. My assumption was they were in the thicker stuff for the bedding, and when they stood up, they was walking down that edge, that logged versus mature timber edge coming up to that inside corner, which happens to be a double edge as well. They're an edge animal. It's what they like doing.
Right.
So then whenever I started looking at it, not once ever with an S in it. Out of the south, did the 2 mature ones ever make daylight? Not once, ever. They hadn't been hunted in 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
They was feeling no human pressure. They simply didn't act that. They didn't react in a manner at which I thought they would, because I hung that stand. The conventional thought, hey, I'm going to come in up here on the northeast corner. I'm going to slide down around here. I'm going to hop up in my stand. I'm going to blow my wind from the southwest, and I'm going to hunt them walking out this inside corner. Shoot them. That is conventional thought. It's what I thought. That's the way I hung the stands. It's what I thought I was doing. Now, after watching that for a month, I found out that the way I had planned on hunting it and the way I was going to hunt it, you know how many times I could have shot that deer with the wind I thought I was going to hunt that stand with? Zero. Not once. Not once did they ever hit that thing. Now, we're talking about no hunting pressure. They hadn't been hunted in several months. They should have had their guard down as much as they possibly could. And still, it was so absolute, it made me change the way I was even thinking. The crazy part about it is anyone at 100%, if it had an in it, if the wind was going southerly in any way, didn't matter if it was west-northwest, east-northeast, or any derivative in between, daylight. If it wasn't, never once. And I'm like, could it be that easy? Is it? And I'm not saying it's easy, but my stand where it was hung, by chance, by luck, I'd never seen any other deer come out further east. So I told Dave, I'm like, hey, let's wait until, instead of it, because October 1st was coming. And I'm like, let's just wait till that wind gets right to where we can catch that northwest wind. And let's put our wind back across that open timber where I've never seen a deer come out of. And then that would give him a 1/4-2 wind to come out there. I think it was either 8th or the 9th of October until we got that wind. And I had a camera there too.
Right.
Never once got a daylight picture of him there in those 8 days, or the 7 days prior.
Right.
That wind shifted that it was either the 8th or the 9th. And it went out of a west-northwest wind that evening. We slid in or got up. He shot that deer very first set. Bam, done. Run out the field. Fell over dead. Game over. And I'm like, I'm on to something. And,
yes.
I'm like, I think I'm on to something. Well, a couple of weeks later, in that same season, on October 25th, I shot a deer named Dozer. A lot of people...
Yep. I think a lot of us know Dozer.
A lot of people know Dozer.
Yeah.
If people know me, a lot of them know me because of that particular video.
And that one was featured on Drury.
Drury Outdoors, Whitetail Madness 11, and I think the original Boontown, and then they played it on one of the Sportsman's Channel episodes.
So if you heard the name, it sounds familiar, there's a reason.
There's a reason.
And how long were you pursuing that deer?
I passed him as a 3.5, and then he was smarter than me for the rest of the time. I killed him at 8.
For 5 years, this deer eluded.
He just treated me like his punk, man. But that deer gave me more lessons than probably any single deer ever. I mean, but he was giving me years up. He had some time, But anyway,
he had your number.
He had my number. He did, And the thing is that on the 23rd so at the time I was working 3-11s at the prison.
Yeah.
The 23rd is either my dad or brother, and I can't remember, but he says I got a call from both. So on one day, the 23rd, we'll call up my dad or my brother. Well, either they called me, said, "Hey, there was a great big deer nudging around that doe with triplets in the it was a picked soybean field that he went back in winter wheat, and." That doe with triplets, I knew. We'd known her for years. That was the 3rd year in a row she had triplets. So then my dad or brother the next day on the 24th, again, I was at work. Again, that evening, bam, out he came, nudging around that doe and triplets. 25th, we had off, and I told Bogart, I don't know if lightning's going to strike 3 times in the same spot in 3 consecutive days, but it was a northeast wind. It was a northeast wind the day before that and the day before that. And then that day was a northeast wind. And I was thinking, if my math is mathing now, it's a northeast wind, which the way we set up, we went in and hung and hunted. I went in to hung and hunt the doe with triplets, thinking, my thought process was, I know that doe, she's at least, I don't know how old she is, but she's had triplets for 3 years. Typically, a year and a half ain't even having twins, or a 6-month-old ain't having twins, let alone triplets.
Right.
So I thought, before she even had triplets, she probably was mature.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's had triplets 3 consecutive years. So I was like, I think this is the oldest doe on the farm. And we'll call her Agnes, And I'm like, and this buck I call, was Dozer. I'm like, I think Dozer, I know is 8.5, knows this doe. She probably is the first one, or one of the first ones, that comes into heat every single year. And he, as long as he has the wind right from where he's bedding, he's going to pop right out here and check her every evening until he knows she's right. And that was my thought. That was the premise behind the way I hung and the way I hunted and all of that stuff.
That was the hypothesis at that point.
That was the hypothesis. That doe came in early, and I mean early, before dark, that night on October 25th, and then here he come. I mean, not long. They were under us eating acorns for about 10 minutes, and Dave was like, "Mark, big buck," and it was him. It was him, and there was some. If you watch the video, there were some tense moments because he called me off of him at 7 yards because he had to come around the tree with the camera. And then he ran out there and they stopped and there's a big limb in the way and it was pretty tense. And I tried to stop him twice and he didn't want to stop, so I had to shoot him at 31 yards walking. But good Lord was on my side that day and it worked out,
Yeah.
But then that was the second deer in a couple weeks.
Right.
That the plan was for the wind. Now, here's the thing. Prior to that, I had shot one Grove Spoon and Crockett deer. Complete luck. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
It was on my dad's property, and I'd set up a food plot, and there was a dam of a pond, and I'd had it all set up, and I had the stand. I was going to come across kind of around the end of the dam of the pond, staying low, and then as soon as you popped up on the ridge, popped up into the stand, and then you blew your wind back across the dam of the pond, and that was a big, thick log bedding area, and they was going to come down and hit the dam of that pond and boop right up in the food plot. It's perfect. And it was perfect. But I was doing that in an evening, and I was asking him to do something he never wanted to do. I'm asking him to stand up during daylight hours. And if you think about it, it's actually crazy. It is the definition of insanity. Everybody's heard it. Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yep.
When you are hunting, thinking about yourself and not him, okay? You are asking him to do something he never wants to do. Think about this. That's his number one tool in everything. Finding a mate, danger, food, all things, knows. That being said, if you think about it, when you're playing the wind, and you are setting that wind up and you're hunting in a manner that it's right for you,
Mm-hmm.
but you're asking him to stand up during daylight hours and walk with the wind hitting him in the back of the head.
Yes.
The good Lord gifted him a tool that is beyond most others' even thought processes. Do you think he's just not going to use that ever? Or only, situationally? No. He's going to use that every second of the day, every minute of the day. And every time somebody plays the wind, and if you're playing the wind and it's for you and not for him, you are the definition of insanity in doing that. You're asking for a miracle. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. A doe could bring him by. And I've seen some that are walking with the wind maybe not right, and usually it's transitionally. They're going from where they had the wind right for him here, and he's got to get here, and there's a small transition period where everything ain't necessarily perfect for him.
Right.
You might get lucky and catch that. But if he's up there and on his feet with all of his cognitive abilities about him, I'll bet you the entire 401k plan that 99% of the time he's walking quartered into the wind. It's almost how they live. It is how they live. So in killing that deer, or we shot that first one, and then we shot the second one, and I'm like, okay, I'm on to something. So then I got to reflecting back to the one that I'd already shot. Well, I thought he was going to come out of that bedding from the north, hit that dam of that pond, go right across the dam of that pond, and pop out right out into the food plot. That was my thoughts. Well, I had a bunch of does right there. I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, brat, brat, and I heard something, and I looked back behind me. It was behind the tree, right on the edge of the hill where that pond is. Pond's here. Here's the edge of the hill. I'm set up right here, dam of the pond. Here he comes, coming right down that ridge. on the very far downwind edge of that whole bedding area. And he was walking along it. And when he came up under me, I shot him there. That's the only other Boone and Crockett deer I'd ever shot.
Right.
You know, up to that time. And at the time, well, I didn't even think about it. But once I had a thought in my head, and I'm like, well, wait a second. Let's reflect on prior situations. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
You know, and it was luck. I mean,
Yeah.
it just so happened that where the stand was and the way my entrance was, he didn't cut my track, and he couldn't get my wind because it was going across the pond, and he was staying right on that ridge, right on the downwind. So he got himself on the downwind side of a doe bedding area, and he was cruising it, looking for does. And then he visualized the does that was standing in front of me, let out a big grunt, and come walking up to him, which ended up being his demise.
Right.
But my point with that is that I had set up to do something. Yeah, that stand worked, but it was by accident. It was the atypical, man, all these deer did this, and then that big one came from here, and whoo, man, the wind was blowing right past him, and I shot him. Well, guess what? That actually worked the way it was supposed to. That was how he was actually doing what he is going to do most every day of his life.
Right.
So
you just happenstanced into the stand.
You just happenstanced into luck. I did.
Yeah.
You know, that was my luck.
Right.
You know, it just happened. It just happened to be that happenstance played out, and I was gifted an ability to watch deer, mature deer, do something in a period of time I otherwise never would have because of that drought and because of that corn getting picked. And it gave me a lesson that has served me very well going forth. Identifying what took place and understanding it was my biggest gift, you know, because since then, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to harp on that 21 thing, but there's 21 that have, there's actually way more than that, because I filmed Bogart kill several, and my son's killed 5, and I've been in a tree for way more than 30 of them. You know, I've been a part of a lot of big deer. I've been long distance part of 200s being killed in Ohio, and I've never set foot on a farm. But my point with that, being said, is that these deer do things in a manner at which is beneficial to them 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And the faster we learn that lesson, the better off we are. And the moment you are setting up a stand, because right now we're getting into that, we're setting stands, we're getting lanes trimmed, we're doing all of this stuff. And if you're hanging that stand for you and you're not thinking about him, you're mistaken, and it will cost you. I think social media is devil is a general rule, but because of what we do and what I do, and you know, especially with the consulting side of things, it's how I market. It's how I do things. How many times have you seen on a hunting site, and it's a picture, and it's usually it's a Boone and Crockett class deer, and he's big picture, daylight picture of him, and most of the time, right in the background, you see ladders and a stand sitting there, and he's like, "Gosh dang it, I hunted that the last 3 days. Now today the wind's wrong, and here he is." Well, guess what? You want to know why that is? I can tell you the answer without you even knowing. I know for a fact, 99%, that stand was hung with only you in mind. It was not. He was getting all kinds of pictures of him. He's probably getting all kinds of daylight pictures of him. But he's never taken the time to break down those daylight pictures to figure out what wind he was going on that daylight. Correct. And he'll probably find out that every time he daylights past that spot, that wind is in his nose in some way, in some facet. It's here. They're here. That's how, because he can smell beyond what he can see. He is vetting everything out ahead of him. Yep. If he's walking with the wind back of the head, he is exposed. He's walking during daylight, and he's exposed to do that. Right. It's against every moral fiber the deer has.
So, you're a Marine.
Yep. Once
a Marine, always a Marine.
Facts.
I think Air Force guys, we retire. I was in the Air Force, but I'm not in the Air Force anymore. Okay? And so when I hear that story, I'm thinking to myself, it'd be like sending a guy to Mogadishu, and a soldier, and sending a Marine to Mogadishu and say, "Here, give me your weapon." It is the one thing that's going to save your life. Yep. And for a deer, it's his nose. So asking a Marine to go be deployed to some foreign country and then take his gun
Take all
away
his weapons
from,
away from him.
I mean, he's never going to go, yeah, let me do that.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to do that. So a deer doesn't want to do it either, and especially a smart deer. A mature buck knows he's alive because of that. And so when you taught me that lesson, I was like, wow. And then hearing it, you know, the way you were able to sit back and observe from a long distance that behavior, I was like, wow. Now, there's one part of this that is the hardest part to understand for a novice. Okay?
Yeah.
So for the listeners, and they're watching, some are obviously watching, on YouTube. When you say quartering to the wind, I now know what you mean.
Yep.
I want to make sure they know what you mean.
So think of a pie chart or a clock. The easiest way is think about the clock on your wall.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And let's say wherever that deer is headed, the travel path is 12.
Yep.
Okay. Does that make sense? Because that
Yep.
should be all. That being said, is it envision that clock being 12 o'clock,
Right.
and whatever direction he's headed is 12. Okay.
Yep.
So typically speaking, he's going to walk when the time, meaning the wind, is 10 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Correct.
Bam, to his walk.
Yep. So
Because
it's creating a wedge, right? And it's
Yep.
allowing him a greater
he's effective.
area
He's
to
effective.
smell.
He's effective.
Right.
If you envision this thing being the doe bedding area,
Yeah.
he don't walk into that bedding area. He's not grinding that. He ain't got to. He's learned over that's not anything he wants to do.
Right.
He wants to make, because he don't know that doe, there's going to be a receptive doe here.
Correct.
And he might have 20 miles he plans on walking. Now,
Right.
don't get me wrong. It might only be in a 600-acre thing, and he's doing zigzags and laps and whatever might be the case, looking for a doe. But my point is, if this is a bedding area, and that wind is like this, coming like 10 o'clock to me,
Yep.
he's going to get all the way on this end, and he's going to walk the smooth path that he can, the easiest path he can to downwind that. He
All
does
that
not have
bedding.
to step in there.
Right.
He can smell every deer in there, and he can smell if one's seasonal, if you will. And if that's the case, he'll turn in, grind in, jump her up, vet her,
Yep.
and if she's right and he thinks she's right, or if he knows she's cycled out or cycling out, then he gets back on the road and he goes to the next doe bedding area and the next one, all the while keeping that nose catty cornered into, or the wind catty cornered into
Right.
his nose. Therefore, he is always smelling danger ahead of him. He's also smelling a doe, which is what he's looking for.
Right.
So if you're a deer and you're looking for food, and maybe it's an acorn and you can't necessarily see it, but you're smelling around in leaves and it's under the leaves, and they can just pick through, they can smell it, they can pinpoint it. It's the same thing.
Right.
He's downwinding that, and then when he hits something that is of interest,
Right.
he curves in there and goes and pinpoints it. Goes on
Right.
about his day. He can't do that with the wind hitting him in the back of the head.
Right.
He's not effective. That's
Right.
what a basket rack does.
Right.
That's what a 2-year-old does. He ain't learned this game.
Right.
That 7, 8, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, you can bet your whole farm that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about how powerful that point is, when you go from doing something, asking him to do something that he never ever wants to do. Okay, because when you're
Right.
hunting the wind for you, when you're playing the wind and the wind is for you and not for him, you're asking him to walk with the wind in back then. You're asking him to do something he never, ever, ever wants to do. How successful do you think? How successful have you ever been to get your wife to go to a baseball game or something if she hates baseball? It's just not going to work out, you know.
I can tell you the number. It's 21 to nothing. If you're keeping score at home, it's 21 to 0.
But
Nada.
but the moral of
because I thought north wind. Okay, I am going to see a deer walking due north into that wind. He's going to walk directly into it, and so I tried to put my stands in places where that he wouldn't smell me, but I never thought about the discharge.
Yeah.
So for every action, there's a reaction. When you go in these woodlots, if you're hunting for a north wind, that's great. What the hell's to the south of you? Because whatever's to the south of you is where all your wind's going, and he's probably going to quarter
That's probably
that.
where, if he's coming to that food source, that's probably, and if he's going to hit there during
Yep.
before dark,
Right.
That's probably where he was better.
Probably why I'm still on 0. And it's an important lesson, and we felt like we mesh well when we do this. We can laugh at me, you can laugh, it doesn't matter. Like, I know everybody thinks they're the greatest hunter in the world, and I can put food on my children's table. I can go in any woodlot, anywhere in the country, Florida included, and I can take and harvest an animal that is young and dumb and tastes really good. Okay, that's awesome. But when it came to letting these deer mature past 4 and 5 years old, I just wasn't seeing them anymore. So I knew what I was doing was not effective. I was just too busy, and I didn't have the time to really deep dive into these subjects. And now that we're able to deep dive into these subjects, there are some times I want to put my head down in a hole. And go, good God, how did I miss this? And, if it wasn't for that drought in 07.
I might still be doing the same thing.
Correct.
I mean,
it's
amazing. That's simple. I mean,
right.
And it's just recognizing something, and then asking yourself why.
Right.
That word is so powerful because you're now diving down trying to learn information.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of times I see people like they have an encounter with him and he gets by them.
Right.
And they're frustrated. They're all mad and they're whatever. Well, okay. So where did he come from? Okay. Well, why? Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he came? I sometimes when I have a consultant or a client with me, whatever, it's almost like a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been to a therapist and they're like, oh, you feel that way? Well, why do you think you feel that way? Okay,
Right.
But it's the same thing.
Right.
This happened. Okay, well, why do you think he did that?
Right.
Why did he do that? Do you think about where he came from and where he went to? Now, okay, well, what was the wind doing with that time? There's was he headed towards another buck? Was he headed towards a doe? Was there action going on?
Right.
or was that all his cognitive abilities about him and he's doing something in a natural manner? Because those are important ones to try to capture, video, whatever, and study it to the hilt. Because if you are in that mindset, you're going to learn something that will stop him from being able to get past you the next time.
Right.
It's a learning. As long
Right.
as long as you're learning, you're good.
Yeah.
But the moment you get bulled up and you're like, gosh dang it, he got past me again. Well, guess what? You all of a sudden let your emotions stop your ability to learn something from that situation.
Correct.
Break it down.
Yeah.
Use it as a tool.
Right.
Because you can assure yourself that that's what he's doing.
Right.
He is. If you are putting your scent or your presence in an area or whatever,
Right.
he's doing his best to learn you.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah.
better be ahead of his game. And again,
Yeah.
you just got to be right once, but you got to be smart in doing so. Because if you just go apply a bunch of pressure haphazardly, you might move him because of your pressure, and
Right.
then
Right.
you had a scenario
Yep.
that your own decision making has caused your own personal failure, and that's something I see a ton.
Mm-hmm.
This particular deer right here, and we alluded to this a little bit prior, but there was 2 other guys hunting on that farm. I shot that deer the first set in there after the first set. I actually posted on Facebook pictures of the deer and pictures of me in the stand that morning, showing the world what I was hunting. I showed the world a 210-inch typical before I ever shot him. Yeah, people's like, you are the craziest SOB I've ever seen.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, but I want this is supposed to be fun. I want it to be fun, and I
Yeah.
want to bring people along for the
Yeah.
journey. And just like you said a minute ago, I laugh at myself. Listen, if he beats me, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say what I did. I'll be like, man, I am dense up here sometimes because he got
Yeah.
past me, whatever. But this is
Yeah.
what I learned from it. So I try to play that out along through my season so people can come along for the ride.
Right.
There's a particular deer that's coming up here pretty quick that that we've named Aussie because he has some stuff down under. It's coming down this way, and in that scenario, I'm hoping to bring everybody on this little ride along for this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good Lord willing, we can get him harvested, but all
That's what makes the podcast kind of a hybrid.
That's what's going to kind of make it a hybrid.
Not just a lesson, but then we want to display
The lesson. Yeah.
And let you watch it at home, watch it play out, watch it do its thing. So, with that kind of being said, when you're Mark Luster's friend and you ride and follow Mark Luster for a year and a half of your life, you can't help but to see, I call it deer porn. It is every day. Mark is getting huge animals, mature bucks, craziest stuff I've ever seen. Like, good God, where's that? Wisconsin. Where's that? Minnesota. Where's that? Ohio. Where's that? Tennessee. Where's that? Kentucky. Where's that? Kansas. Like, it's insane to me how many people in your consulting clients that, that you've consulted with over the years, there's that friendship. And that's one of the things I thought I valued most about you as a consultant, is that you really do care about the hunter and the people the families that you worked with and setting their farms up, and you maintain communications with
You know what's funny about that? And I don't even know if you know this. Matter of fact, I know you don't know this. I care if I show people something. This is my appointment book right here for this year, for this last year.
Yeah.
And I detail all of my dates and everything and the name and the number and everything.
Yeah.
So every year after season, before season starts the next year, I'll go to my previous year's appointment book, and then I open it up, and then I'll go through every one of these people's numbers and all that stuff, and send a text to every one of my clients. How things go, how the plan play out. If you see anything, whatever, just follow up. Just follow up, just to say, hey, did things play out the way you wanted to? Did you get everything in play? And so on and so forth. It's funny you brought that up, because I actually brought this for the downtime to lay out my numbers to start sending texts to today.
For your people, yeah.
For my people, yeah.
So one of the icing on the cake, the day I was like, listen, we all are busy. We all have to read through the hype in the world, and everything's being sold to somebody. It's mind-numbing. But I was with you, and the day I knew, I was like, I nailed it. I got the right guy. There was a gentleman that reached out to you about 3 target deer in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And you're talking to the guy. I'm in the truck. Again, I followed Mark for the last year and a half. I'm with him. If he's in the woods, I'm in the woods. He's in the truck, I'm in the truck. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. And then the lessons he teaches me, I put and record on my phone. And then we have them as podcast episodes for our viewers and listeners. So that day, that guy was moderately frustrated. It was mid-season.
It was like mid-October, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and he had 3 target bucks, and they had 0 sightings. And you had asked him to send you a pin. He sent you a pin of a farm that was trees. There was nothing but trees. It was all trees. And I'm sure by now you're recollecting who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But the stand placement is so pivotal, yet so many times I feel like it's the last thing people do. I feel like it's the last thing we do on some of our farms, right? And maybe it gets rushed, okay? But that gentleman owned that farm, I don't know for how many years, it's none of my business. That guy had that farm, had 3 shooters on that farm, and he asked you for your help, and you're like, well, as luck would have it, I have 2 booners on the ground this year, and I have some time. I'll come out and I'll help you. And you took off, and on that trip I didn't go with you. It was hunting season. I was supposed to be here trying to shoot a booner, not a 154. And long story short, you went there and you were back before I even knew you were gone, really. Like, I think you were gone a day and a half. Anyway, you came back, and I was like, how'd the console go? And you're like, oh, great, them deer, man, you wouldn't believe they're traveling about 2 miles to a bean field every day. There's like a ridge from the gods that just put on this farm, and them deer are traversing that field. I went in there and I told them, hang a stand here for the north, put a stand here for the south. You got out of the dude's farm before you guys left a lot of scent there, and he goes in 2 days later and arrows the largest deer on the farm.
Yep.
And then the sun arrowed, I think the second or third largest, and then those 3 deer died.
They died.
Those 3 deer don't die without you and Luster's Land Consulting at that guy's farm in the middle of hunting season. Okay, this guy, I mean, you could tell he was kind of at wit's end. Man, we've done everything. We have him on camera. We have him in daylight. We just can't. When we go hunt those places, we're not seeing them. And I reflect back to when you got to my farm, and you're like, yeah, what I see sometimes is people will put a box blind out in the middle of a field, and that's great. You can get in there because there's nothing in the field at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But how the heck are you getting out? And then I like shrunk in my couch, and I'm like, shit, he's gonna see my blind out here in the middle of this field. And sure enough, the next day we did. So what I'd like to do is kind of, again, is just talk about that stand placement, thinking about like that guy, like the consulting client, you know, from Wisconsin, you know.
Yeah.
So your first thing was you were looking for where they were going to eat, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that particular place, they had to travel a pretty good ways, and I don't remember exactly how far it was, but they had to travel a pretty good ways out to food. Now this particular spot had a really nice logged, you know, hub, pretty high. You know, kind of the highest spot in the area, and they'd logged it a couple years prior. Really got thick, and there was just no way that wasn't the master bedroom of that entire area. And I'm like, I mean, this is ground zero. So just right off the get-go, I'm pretty certain, bam, this is ground zero. Okay, from here to there, again, off of previous statements of, I don't want to hunt them in their house. I want to hunt them behind their back door.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to go up into where that whole 40 or 50 acres, it was trashed. When I say trashed, it was perfect. You know?
Right.
But
perfect whitetail habitat.
Perfect whitetail habitat. Lots of browse, just almost clear cut. That being said, I wanted to hunt the skinny pinches that led to and from there, especially coming from that food source. And actually there was a couple of different ridges that fed into that.
Right.
And we, on that particular ridge, I think we put 3 stands. And I think 2 of those 3 killed every one of those deer, if I remember right. But all that being said, it's a lot of it is identifying, you know, where ground zero is going to be, because
which is the bedding.
Which is the
ground
bedding.
Zero is the bedding.
The bedding, yeah.
Yep.
And then how are they going to tear out of that, you know? And then as the rut rolls in, you know that is the destination of every buck in this entire area.
Right.
Because you know it's loaded full of bedded deer. So we identified skinny pinches leading to and from there, and then our entrance and exit routes to get in and out of there without disturbing anything coming to or from the food itself. You know, so we needed a back door into that. You know, and it took, you know, one was pretty direct entrance, and then one of them was, I mean, the poor gentleman had to go a half a mile out of his way to get there. You know, I mean, but he secured permission with the neighbor and all of that stuff, and then zipped in through there. He had an e-bike, which was awesome.
That's a tool.
You know, huge tool, because he's leaving no ground scent, and
Yes.
that's something, you know, that I'm all about.
Amen.
Not ever doing. All of that being said, we had some pretty good entrances, we had some pretty good exits, and I felt really strongly about that, and it didn't take no time at all for that to play out.
Yeah.
But, and again, you know, and you hunted those, you know, because those were kind of dual purpose stands, because you could slide into there in the evening fairly secure that you're not going to bump into any deer because of that bedding the way it was. And this was up off of that just a little bit, and structure wise allowed you in and out of there without them seeing you. And then in the mornings, you was way back there before they ever came back, you know.
Right.
And it worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
It worked out really well.
Well, I think about it a lot of times, because I think a lot of the lessons I learned from you is that hunting on that ridge, where you have a steep ravine.
Yeah.
You know, the mature bucks are like the old men. You know, you'll hear us say this time and time again. They get locked into that mode. They're not walking down that steep ass stuff, so they're going to take the path of least resistance. Now that allows you egress. And so we're going to do a whole podcast on getting in and out.
Yeah.
But where egress allows you in those steep ditches, it also allows you to bury your scent. So when
Down
they're
and
trying to put their stand up,
Yep.
you know, do you have some pointers about now, you know, we're honing this in. We're not just talking about hanging a stand on the edge of a field where you've seen a deer.
Yep.
We're talking about how the deer uses that woodlot that you're hunting, how he uses his nose, and where you're going to put your scent. And if we can get 9 out of 10 people to walk away with this lesson, I think there'll be significantly more mature deer harvested this year.
This is a really good lesson right here. If you take an aerial photo, okay, take an aerial photo,
Mm-hmm.
and then turn on, like if you're on Onyx, turn on your map layers where you've got elevation lines in it, and you'll see the points, you know, to where you know that's a big draw, you know. So figure out your ridges, look on your elevation lines, and you're going to know what's your highest points and what's your lowest points. And then whether you have a map like this that you can dry eraser mark on or whatever, but if the elevation lines are on that, which there are on this one, but what you do is every one of those draws, if you'll just draw like a triangle, if you will, up every one of those draws all the way to the top where they come to a point, draw them, and then shade them in any way, shape, or form, you know, just to where you don't get confused off of what is the valley, the dead space, if you will. You can basically eliminate nearly every one of those triangles is to a route that he's going to cross, essentially, typically. And then if you take all of those fingers and points, it's going to, and then if you say, okay, well, he's going to go from here and he's going to go here, and these are all of these points sticking up here, and we've shaded out all of them, figure out your most direct route now that he can make from where you think he's going to where you think he's coming from, and then with you eliminating any one of these ditches,
yes,
and a pattern will show, a path, a most logical path. I love using those pinches, those ditches. I've killed nearly every one of my big deer off of them, because if you think about it, if you're up top and there's a big deep ditch, canal, whatever, coming up the side of the hill, and it terminates right at the top, you know he's not going to side hill. He has to come around the top of it or the bottom of it. Well, a buck during daylight like that does not want to be at the bottom of that hill walking. They typically are going to go to the high side. As a general rule, if we're talking about statistically speaking, you're going to figure the high side of that. Plus, that does you a favor because the wind's typically correct or consistent in the manner at which it's supposed to be on the top of the ridges. In doing that, all of a sudden, when you draw those lines from A, where you think he's going to be, to B, where you think he came from, and vice versa, you will come up with the most logical route, and then try to find where a point comes here and a point comes here and creates a tight pinch. Now you know if he's coming from over there and he's coming from over here, all of a sudden this geographic feature stops him from side hill and here, and this one stops him from side hill and here. Oh, well, wait a second. This ridge is only 40 yards wide up top. So if I can access this in that ditch to the top of the hill, and the moment I get to the top, I'm up in a stand, now I'm covering the 30-yard wide or 40-yard wide area at which he has to come through.
Right.
From point A to point B.
Right. And your wind is going
and
back
now my
in
wind's kicked off the side. Money set. Yeah. It is. Those are the ones that the good Lord just touched with his finger. Said, sir, if you find this, you are in it to win it. And typically, when you find those spots, you'll kill every big deer on that farm year in and year out, because that mature buck is going to use that structure in the same manner almost. Every deer is a little individualized, but
sure,
you know, the same principles in the mature buck side of things typically ring true, you know, and you can educatedly guess that he's going to be there at some point in time, and the structure is going to put him in that window. You just have to have the seat time then, and keep telling yourself, I only have to be right once.
Right.
I only have to be right once.
Yeah, because he's walking down that
I tell
trail.
myself that 500,000 times a year.
Yeah, hey, listen, man, 21, 0. So I'm telling myself the same thing. And if you think about that deer, and again, we're saying we're hunting for us. We're asking a deer to do what it's never going to do. We're asking a soldier to go to war without a gun. They're just not going to do it, and neither is the deer. But if we can understand that, and now we start to block off that map, the areas you need to look at for your stand on are now blatantly obvious to you, and your search zone has been decreased dramatically.
Yeah.
Again,
it makes it to where you are you've sped up your learning curve by an astronomical amount.
Correct.
Essentially.
Correct. And again, I would have never known this had I not rode with you, sat with you, and then made the note of it. And again, we appreciate you sharing this. But these are the ways that I contend, I hunted with outfitters for years because I lived in Florida. I got kicked out of a leash for shooting an 88-pound doe. That was a mature doe. I shot her in the head. They didn't like it. It was with the bow and arrow, and they didn't like it. So I took the deer, I threw it over my shoulders, and I walked out. So we don't have big deer to hunt. So when you get to the Midwest, you're looking at these places. You're like, where do I put a stand? We don't have these things. We have swamps that funnel them into dry spots and things. There's still funnels, but understanding that the way you dissect a map eliminates 90% of the hunter fatigue of walking around trying to figure out where you're going to put your stand. And again, it's back to, I hunted with them because I didn't have time. So if we can give people time, we're creating the one thing that nobody else can create, and that's time. Yeah. Time is fleeting. It is ever changing. We're losing it as we speak. But if we can pass these lessons down to the next generation, I'm telling you, I think you personally are going to make a lot of hunters significantly better at honing their skills, sharpening those skills, and saving them an enormous amount of time so they don't have to go through their shit being thrown in the front lawn. Like some people we know, right?
Myself included.
So I really do. I appreciate the fact that you break that down like that. I think it's very relevant to the world we live in. Nobody has more time. We have a lot of young people, which we love watching. You and I, I like watching Jesse and his brother, and they're killing deer, and I love the passion these young kids have and the young guys. But if we can give them those lessons, I'm 51, I'm learning this stuff. I wish I would have known it when I was 20, right? But I grew up without a dad, and it's not an excuse. It just is what it is. I didn't have anyone to show me the woods. You grew up with a dad, and you still didn't learn this lesson until you observed it in 2007. So it doesn't matter where a hunter comes from. It just matters that they have an open mind and they want to learn. And you will see over and over on our setups that this hunting season, you're going to get to see the actual trees that are sitting at the top of these ridges where Mark has funneled these things out. And it's incredible, the video. I mean, you were at the train station and you were just like, look at this 4-year-old. I don't know, he was 180. He was a booner. Mark just didn't want to shoot him, but he sure walked by 4 or 5 times a day, every day, kept you entertained,
Yep.
And even though he wasn't a deer that you wanted to harvest, was gaining that knowledge and getting the familiarity that your plan works. Your scent was going exactly where it needed to go. He was following the plan. He just wasn't the right one that you wanted to shoot at that time. So I really feel like this is one of those really pivotal lessons. People walk away with this one, it's just so strong.
And the thing about this lesson is think of, and everybody hated it, geometry. Everything builds off itself. And if you get yourself lost earlier in the building block, if you will, you're frickin' lost for the rest of the time, and you got to get her back.
Yeah.
And my point with that is most everything that we're going to talk off, every wormhole we go get into from here is based off of this premise, right?
Yes.
This platform, this lesson, how they do things, how they want to move during daylight hours.
Right.
Every other part of every other strategy is based off of this platform today.
Sure.
So,
yeah, and to prove that point, we have the 52 in Illinois, That was a farm we got from Toby, and that farm, like, we had trail cameras out. Toby had, everybody had trail cameras out. The other guy had that farm before me had trail cameras out, and we all had the same pictures. Except I was in that stand on October the 28th, and there was a northwest wind and a deer that we had on no camera. We probably should name him, instead of the 6x4, we should probably just name him the neighbor's deer. Because he lives at my neighbor's, he stays at my neighbor's, he eats at my neighbor's year round. He never comes to visit. But until about end of October, the month of October, if we get a cold front and we hit all these little things, and we'll go into those, the X days, when it's an X day in October, he's in the field, and almost every time he's in the field first. 3:30, 3:38, 3:33, 3:36, he's there like clockwork. And so this year is the first year we're really going to try to harvest that deer, my neighbor deer. And I know that stepping foot on that farm in a south wind is futile to my success. Stepping foot with an east, a west, anything without that west-northwest in it, he just has zero interest. He's not east, he's never coming. South, he's never coming. He just, southwest, we're like, oh, we got west in it. Nope, he ain't walking out there. He only wants a very specific wind, and he only will come off of my neighbor's place onto my place in those conditions. And honing that with the notebook really taught me that you can have trail cameras out there, and you think you see all the deer on your property, but I assure you that neighbor deer is bigger than every deer on my property that I own on 52 acres. That some gun, when he comes through, the man's in town, and when the man steps out, everything else walks away, right? And that lesson has been so critical to my learning that, I just really felt like we had to hammer that one home, and people hopefully this year are going to get to watch that all play out live on video.
Yeah.
And it should be fun, and we'll be able to see the actual farm. I have a sneaking suspicion. Yeah. So again, in closing today, we never want to ask a deer to do what it doesn't want to do. It's not gonna work out for you. It's gonna waste your time. Yeah.
Might as well got a 12-pack of beer and watch the football game that night. You're gonna see the same number of big deer.
Yep, absolutely.
But at least you got to see some football if you stayed at home.
Yeah, exactly. And with the family, they're not like you're gone every day. So there's ways to mitigate that stuff with the right tools and knowledge. Again, to the listeners, this was all about trying to get you to understand, to think about the deer, not yourself. And I know that's hard in the day and age we live in, with people taking selfies all the time of themselves. But we really have to think about that deer if we want to be a better hunter. And with that, we'll close this one up. It was another awesome episode. Thanks for all the intel.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to talk about the farm? Winafarm.com.
Winafarm.com. And I know that we're going to kind of be a little bit repetitive to this, but we're going to give away a farm, and at the end of the day, we've got a farm identified. We got the farm, that we have now. We've already started. We got the food plots in place. We got blinds going in, stands going in. But everything that I would do to a farm that we have as our own is going, all the blood, sweat, and tears is going into this farm, and then we're just going to give it to somebody.
Yeah.
And hopefully they kill the largest deer of their life on it, and we can have them on later on.
Yeah.
So
I have a feeling listeners to the podcast, again, I have a feeling a lot of people will, if they take this to heart, I have a feeling a lot of people, if they question what they're doing and think, okay, how would I apply this to where I'm hunting? I have a feeling a lot of people are going to kill a lot bigger deer this year, and with fewer sits in the stand, which is at the end of the day the key to everyone's life.
That's a lot of my clients. A lot of my clients have done very well for themselves financially, so on and so forth, which is awesome. But what they don't have is time.
Correct.
Because their jobs keep them busy, or family, or whatever, or they're an absentee owner. Let's say they own ground in Iowa or Illinois, and they live in Florida or Louisiana or whatever. So time to do things, to scout, to do a lot of the stuff that somebody that lives there otherwise would do.
Yeah.
That's what they don't. That's the luxury they're not afforded to.
Correct.
So And we go there and we set these farms up, and it makes them effective. We'll just put it like that. It makes them more efficient in getting there, and that can't make wife mad either.
No, absolutely not.
And Daddy's happy because he's got a big old booner at the taxidermist, and Mama's happy because her husband's home. So
listen, man, if you
I'm just making smiles happen.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you can get it done before October, it's closed, and you have your target deer on the ground, I mean, you got the whole holiday season, I mean, it's pretty cool to watch. And so we continue to bring you the content. We continue to bring you the lessons. Mark's continued to divulge his secrets, the lessons that he's learned over time. In addition, in the future, we're going to be having other podcasts where other hunters have harvested animals, and we're going to ask them to come on, and we're going to interview them and talk to them and see the consistent, the
common denominator.
We're always looking for that common denominator. We're always looking for another trend. We're always looking for another thing, and we're just excited for you guys to go along on the journey with us. We're excited to bring you this information. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, smash, like, subscribe. On YouTube, you're automatically entered to win the farm. You can go to winafarm.com. You can register to win the farm. If
you feel swag store.
Yeah, go to the swag store to get an extra couple items, and the swag store's got great
put
stuff.
your name in the hat again for additional times.
Yeah,
so on and so
yeah.
forth.
And in the future, as we get the sponsors all kind of hammered out, again, the sponsor money is going to farms for you guys, just so you're aware. So we have somebody and they want to sponsor. That money is going to these farms that we're giving away to you guys. And when that happens, you're really going to start to see some other things, because we've had some pretty interesting conversations thus far. But we're just holding off. We just want to get it out there. We don't want to be tailored to any one shape or thing. We want to just bring you guys a no bullshit podcast where you can learn to improve your hunting and try to increase that success. Because with more big deer on camera, more big deer on Facebook, there will be more people coming to our sport. There is plenty of land to hunt on. Anyone who tells you there's nowhere to hunt, they don't know what they're talking about. I assure you,
it's all about effort.
I had a farm for 10 years, not one person walked up. Okay? So there are people out there, they will let you hunt. It's your manner, and if you're willing to throw in some elbow grease. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you guys for following us along. Mark, thanks again for all the secrets.
See you next week.
Thanks for the tips. See you next week.